When you're going for clarity and comprehensiveness, you need to consider the type of graphic you want to use for the data set you have in hand. We're going to go through 4 different types of graphics and their pros and cons. What are they better at representing? We'll look at tables, bar graphs, line graphs, and pie charts. First of all, you have a table. This is best when you have large amounts of data. Notice here there are 7 different regions, 2 countries, and 2 calculations. This is actually not a large amount of data, but it's large enough that a table is the best way to present it all. In contrast, a bar graph is best for relative values, when you want to show very quickly the difference or a comparison contrast between something. Here I can tell New York gets far more average rainfall, 47.25 inches, than Phoenix, which only registers 7.66 inches. With a bar graph, you do have to be careful to label everything clearly so people can tell what's the relative value. Our bar graph here does a good job of starting its y-axis at 0 so it doesn't skew the data or the results. A line graph is best for change over time, when what you have on your x-axis is months or years. Again, our y-axis starts at 0, and pretty quickly we can determine that this starts at 1980 and takes us up to 2000-2001. So it's covering 20 years of trends. That's another way to think of a line graph. It shows you a trend over time. This shows how the number of faculty in different engineering disciplines has changed over 20 years. There was a drop in the early 90s that picked up some, but it's been hard to get back to the highs of around 1991. Each line here has a different color and shape to help us figure out, okay, where's electrical engineering? Well, that's top. Where's computer engineering? Blue triangle, that's down here. This line graph also allows us to compare 7 different disciplines. If I were to try and describe this in words, it would take me an awfully long time, and it might not be as clear. Right now, one image, one page, I can convey a huge amount of information. Last but not least, we have the pie chart. As with a bar graph, this is best for relative size, but it's also good for showing how parts represent a whole. You want to make sure that everything in your circle adds up to a total, like 100%, or your top number. You don't want to have the distorted sort of pie chart that we looked at in a previous video lecture where percentages add up to over 200. In the summer of PC sales, who has the biggest share of the market? Well, others. After that, Compaq, Packard Bell, then Apple. You can tell this is a dated pie chart, but someone who's interested can tell at a glance that Dell had a smaller market share than Apple, IBM had a larger market share than Hewlett-Packard, and so forth. So for our test case, we're going to use some data from the survey you did during the first week of class. I asked you, how do you feel about doing a major group project where you don't get to pick your own team? And you had options to choose from. So some of you said you'll survive, some of you said I can't pick, why do you hate me? I might be ill, and a couple of you said I heart group work. Which graphic would be best for this? There are 17 responses here. Is this a large amount of data? Should I represent it as a table? Is it showing me change over time? Should I use a line graph? Would a bar graph be better to show the relative proportion of students who picked one response over another? What we're going to do next is look at how we can take these word results, there's no numbers here, and convert them into various types of graphics using Microsoft Excel. Now, do keep in mind that I'm working on a Mac. Things on your PC will look different. What I have done is I've pasted all 17 responses from this particular question on our first week of class survey into an Excel workbook. In order to make counting them all up easier, what I can do is select all of the items. I can then go to the Data tab and choose Sort. It's already set for A to Z order, so I click Ascending, and now similar responses are grouped together. It's easier for me to count them up. 2 people love group work. 1 person wonders why I hate him or her. 2 people might be ill. And that leaves us with 12 folks who are going to survive. My next step is to make sure that I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 different descriptions. Everything else is redundant. So I can select the rows that don't have a count or number associated with them, go back to the Home tab, and delete the row. I can repeat this process for everything until I have all 4 and their counts. Now I have the data I need to create a column chart, a line graph, a pie chart. I could do a scatter, other. Let's start playing around with some of this. If I select all of my descriptions and counts and start with column, I'm going to go ahead and do clustered column. That's the simplest. And here it is. 2 people, I love group work. 1 person, why do you hate me? 2, and then 12. I can see all the information. It's pretty easy to compare. By far and away, most people say they will survive. If someone else were to look at this column chart, he might not know that the numbers on my y-axis represent number of students. I need to go to Chart Layout and then Axis Titles. Right now, it has no axis title. I'm going to go ahead and select Rotated Title, which then allows me to delete the generic one and put number of students. That's better. Does this Series 1 over here really help me? No. I've added my axis label, so I can take this and simply delete it. Is this the best way to represent this survey result, however? Let's look at another option. What about a line graph? Well, Excel is telling me this is to display trends over time. Is this a trend? Does it show how your attitudes toward group projects evolved? No, it really doesn't. And if I use a line graph, yes, I can identify this is 2, this is 12, but it implies that somehow over the course of time, 12 of you decided you liked group work, which again is neither accurate nor clear. Let's not do a line graph. How about a pie chart? I'm going to choose the simple 2D one. It comes pre-formatted for color coding. Here we can clearly see the relationships of parts to the whole. The majority is purple. I'll survive. When I hover over it, and this may be hard to see, it says value equals 12, 71%. Wow. This is the sort of information that I might want to put on my actual pie chart. If I click on the circle somewhere, it sort of becomes highlighted or at least outlined. I want to go up to Chart Layout and Data Labels. Right now there are no data labels. I can choose Value. That gives me the number of respondents. Alternatively, I can choose Percentage. I can move the data labels around if I don't like them way out on the edge. I can edit them. I can say this is 70% of students in 1143. I could add that, going back to chart layout, as a chart title, title above chart. Call it 1143 Attitudes Towards Group Work. Now this is a much better, clearer, more accurately labeled graphic. As you're working on your own exercise 3, you want to think about what is the best way to represent the increase and or decrease in figures in the data set you have selected. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.